Your heart just stopped beating. Somewhere inside you, a clock starts counting down. You have maybe 10 minutes of you left. Most people picture death as a slow fade to black. But some new science hints it may not be that simple. One last flash of light in the dark. This is what happens in your final 10 minutes alive. Right now, your heart pushes blood in a loop. That loop feeds oxygen to every cell you own. When the heart stops, the loop breaks. And the fuel line to your brain is cut. Your brain is a furnace that never rests. It burns oxygen faster than almost any organ you have. But it keeps almost none of that fuel in reserve. Its emergency supply is measured in seconds, not minutes. With the blood halted, that tiny reserve starts draining. Within about 10 seconds, consciousness can quietly slip away. The lights in the room are still on, but the person watching them is already gone. Underneath everything now, an invisible countdown is running. For a short window, the damage can still be undone. After roughly 1 to 3 minutes, that window closes. Brain cells starved of oxygen begin to die for good. This is why the final minutes are so narrow. So little time. So much still happening inside. Here is the part almost nobody tells you. Your body does not shut down all at once. Power's down in a careful, brutal order. Think of a building, closing floor by floor. First, blood flow retreats from your hands and feet. It pulls inward to protect the core a little longer. That is why the skin goes pale and cool. Fingers and toes turn cold while the chest stays warm. One by one, organ systems fall silent. Each waits its turn in a grim sequence. The kidneys slow, the gut goes still. Muscles that held you upright for decades let go. The jaw slackens. The face smooths and softens. This is not a single switch flipping off. It is a managed shutdown, running to the very end. And while the body quiets, the breath turns strange. Near the end, breathing stops behaving normally. Doctors call what comes next agonal breathing. Slow, gasping, irregular pulls for air. Long pauses, then a sudden desperate gasp. To a person in the room, it looks like struggle. It looks like the body fighting for one more breath. But here is what is important to understand. It is not thought to be conscious suffering. It is a reflex. A brainstem starved of oxygen firing on instinct. The mind that could feel fear has most likely already gone. The gasps can be a final few, or they can stretch on far longer. Either way, they are automatic, not a choice. Then sometimes comes another sound entirely. A soft, wet, rattling noise with each breath. People have long called it the death rattle. It happens when a person can no longer swallow. Saliva and secretions gather quietly in the throat. Air passing through them makes that gurgling sound. It is often harder on the listener than the dying. Distressing to hear, but not thought to bring pain. So the body dims, system by system. But one thread of awareness may hold on. As the senses go dark, one may linger longest. Not sight, not touch, hearing. Sight often fades early as the eyes lose their supply. But the ears may keep listening much longer. In 2020, researchers put this idea to the test. They studied dying patients in their final hours of hospice. The patients were unresponsive, showing no outward signs of awareness. So the team measured their brains with EEG sensors. Then they played sounds and watched for a response. And some of the dying brains still reacted to sound. Sometimes their patterns resembled a healthy young brain's. No one can say exactly what those patients heard. But the wiring for listening was clearly still active. The voices in that room may truly be reaching them. This is why hospice nurses tell grieving families a simple thing. Keep talking. They may still hear you. So hold the hand. Say the words that matter. The last thing you offer might still land. Now the story takes a strange, unexpected turn. For most of history, we could only guess. We never watched a human brain in the act of dying. Then, in 2022, it happened almost by accident. An 87-year-old man was in the hospital for epilepsy. Doctors had wired his brain to an EEG monitor. They wanted to study his seizures, nothing more. Then, mid-recording, he suffered a fatal heart attack. The machine was still running as he died. It captured about 15 minutes around his death, including the 30 seconds on each side of his last heartbeat. For the first time, we had a front row seat. And what the recording showed intrigued the team. In the moments around that final heartbeat, gamma activity surged. A wave of organized brain rhythms swept through it. Gamma waves are not random noise or static. They are a rhythm linked to a mind hard at work. We see them during deep concentration and focus. We see them when we retrieve a vivid memory. And we see them when we dream. The dying brain was making a strikingly similar pattern. The lead scientist offered a careful, haunting interpretation. Perhaps the brain was replaying its most important moments. Last recall of a life as it ended. A possible biological hint at your life flashing before your eyes. But hold on, one brain is not proof. A single case could easily be a fluke. And this brain was unusual to begin with. Epilepsy and brain injury can alter gamma activity. The scientists knew this. They said so plainly. One recording is a clue, not a conclusion. What they needed was for it to happen again. And in 2023, something similar did happen again. A separate team in Michigan studied 4 dying patients. All were comatose, being removed from life support. Their brains were monitored as the machines came off. In 2 of those 4 patients, the brains surged. The same organized gamma waves rose after the heart failed. The activity clustered in a very specific region. A crossroads tied to memory and the senses. An area some researchers link to out-of-body experiences. 2 studies, 2 continents, the same strange flare. But here is where we must be honest and careful. These are tiny studies, a handful of brains in total. And not one of those patients survived. No one woke up to tell us what they felt. We see the fireworks. We cannot read the show. So we cannot say these people saw anything. We cannot say they relived a single memory. We only know the brain was intensely, strangely active. A study suggested. It did not prove. This is a door held open, not an answer. And these studies show brain activity and nothing more. They say nothing about what may lie beyond. Still, the pattern is hard to ignore. Sometimes the strangeness arrives before the very end. There is another phenomenon that hospice workers know well. They call it terminal or paradoxical lucidity. It is a mind, thought lost, seeming to return. Imagine someone deep in the fog of dementia. For years, they have not known their own family. Then, near the end, the fog seems to lift. They speak clearly. They recognize the faces around them. They say names no one thought they still held. A last bright window opens without warning. This is not just a rare, comforting story. In one study of 151 dementia patients, it was common. About 62% showed some episode of unexpected clarity. And these moments can cluster near the end of life. May arrive within the final days. A candle, it seems, can flare before it goes out. Some dying people report even stranger things. They speak to loved ones who are not in the room. They say they are getting ready to go somewhere. Hospice staff hear these accounts again and again. Science has not settled what causes them. We can only say they are widely, honestly reported. The dying mind, it seems, does not simply switch off. It can do some of its most vivid work at the end. So let us come back to you. Back to that clock and those 10 minutes. Death may not be a plain fade to black. It may be your brain's final, strangest performance. A managed shutdown on the outside, floor by floor, and a possible surge of memory and dreaming within. We do not know what it feels like. We may never fully know from the inside. But the science hints at something remarkable. In its last act, the brain may not go quietly. It may flare into some of its most organized activity ever. A private show of memory and light, playing as the theater goes dark. And if that show is real, it has one audience. Not a crowd, not the doctors, not the family. Just a single person, watching from the only seat. You.